With Red Dead Redemption 2, Rockstar was able to create one of the highest praised video games ever made. Every single thing about it is amazing, like the open world, the side quests, the music, and especially its beauty. Just riding through the landscape feels so incredible.
It's as satisfying to me as coming is.
But the aspect that stands out the most is its story and characters, especially the main protagonist Arthur Morgan. And I'll probably get a lot of hate for this, but I actually think that he's a little overrated. Yes, please hear me out. Don't get me wrong, just like everyone else, I absolutely loved his personal redemption arc of becoming a better man, trying to make amends and getting the remaining gang members out alive. However, his dynamic with Dutch was so frustrating to me that it actually kind of destroyed my whole experience with the game. In my eyes, it had nothing to do with being loyal, but blindly following him without using his own head. Over the course of the story, Dutch has done so many things that make us see what kind of a person he truly is. Best case, he's a bad leader whose plans mostly end up in gang members dying, and also how he gets a stroke every time someone even dares to defy or question him.
Insist.
And worst case, he's simply a... Especially when he left Arthur to die, his own son who has been by his side for over 20 years, and then sided with Micah who only has been in their gang for a few months. Honestly, it's so absurd, it wasn't believable at all to me. I could also talk about how his entire vocabulary only consists of the two words plan and Tahiti, but I think you get the idea. That's why during this scene,
I gave you all I had.
I didn't feel anything because I thought, well, why the hell did you give this lunatic everything? It really made me go,
I'm gonna break my monitor, I swear!
Anyways, despite that, I think the game conveys many valuable lessons that we as the player can learn, especially when looking at Arthur. First, I'll cover one of the main themes of the game, which is loyalty. And here I'll also explain my main problem with the character and why loyalty should never be blindly following others. After that, I'll talk about how he embodies Jordan Peterson's quote,
"You should be a monster, and then you should learn how to control it."
and how this makes him one of the most valuable members of the gang. And last but not least, our ability to change while looking at others' transition and how we get from this to this. Instead of spending the last months of his life drinking and whoring, waiting for death and thinking,
Come on, kill me, I'm here!
he does everything in his power to get the other gang members out alive and also to make amends for his bad deeds in the past. Anyways, enough talking. So kings and queens, let's get started.
Okay, let's go.
You know, nothing means more to me than this gang, the bond we share. It's the most real thing to me. I would kill for it, I would happily die for it.
But what about loyalty?
Be loyal to what matters.
Okay, so let's start with the point that might get me a lot of hate here. The topic of loyalty plays a major role in this story, and I think it's important to differentiate here. As I've said, the loyalty towards the other gang members and in the last chapters also towards his own moral compass was truly beautiful, but then we also have it towards Dutch in particular, and that's the problem. Let me briefly go over all the things that Dutch has done over the course of the story that again, best case make him a terrible leader and worst case a horrendous person, which will hopefully make you see why I think this way. In chapter 1 he doesn't tell anyone what happened in Blackwater, which is already suspicious. Then he breaks his own rule for revenge.
You always said revenge is a luxury we can't afford.
And doesn't listen to Arthur and Hosea, who both disapprove of his idea. In chapter 3 we have him making the deputy drunk and trying to benefit from both families, which is way too risky and eventually leads to Sean dying and Jack being captured. Again, he has received a lot of backlash from the members but still proceeded with the plan. Then we have him being played like a puppet by Bronte and again succumb to his lust for revenge. In chapter 5 Dutch kills another woman, which was completely unnecessary. And when they leave the island, I mean, he goes completely nuts. First of all, he acts incredibly irresponsible, like when shooting Cornwall. But what was much crazier is how he treated the other gang members. He completely didn't care about John being captured and even gets angry at Arthur for going after him all by himself.
I had a goddamn plan!
And they're supposed to be his son figures, I mean, what? And now we come to the point that made me the most furious. This unthankful piece of shit left Arthur to die, and after all that he sided with Micah, who's only been in their camp for a few months instead of his two sons, who have been trustworthy companions for basically their whole lives, especially Arthur. And when he suggests to let John, Abigail and Jack go, which is a perfectly reasonable request, Dutch loses it because he dared to question his authority, or that he indirectly caused Eagleflies' downfall and only helps people if he can benefit from them, but I think you get the idea. And I don't agree when people say that he was good from the beginning but turned bad over the course of the story, potentially caused by his head injury. I mean, even if that is the case, how should I believe that he left his son to die? His son who has had his back for over 20 years and instead sided with pretty much still a stranger. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's totally absurd. I actually like Micah much more than Dutch. I mean, he's someone you're supposed to hate, and since most people do, I would say mission accomplished, but so many seem to like Dutch, which I just can't understand. Right from the beginning I thought that he isn't trustworthy at all, which made it so frustrating to see how Arthur, despite all that crap, still followed him almost until the very end. And my problem isn't the fact that Dutch is a freaking... but how Arthur reacts in these moments. When drowning Bronte, all they did was standing there speechless as if they had just all shit their pants, even though they clearly disapprove of this. I mean, at least John said.
Part of your philosophy books cover feeding a fella. The goddamn alligator, Dutch.
And he also breaks his own revenge rule again. I mean, they're all taller and stronger than him, but for some reason they seemed a little intimidated. When Dutch kills the woman, Arthur only says,
You keep killing folk, Dutch.
I mean, especially if you play on high honor, I think a much stronger response would be more appropriate. And when Arthur thinks he left him to die, he only says,
You ran away.
I mean, your own father left you to die and that's all you have to say? Or when abandoning Abigail, he only says,
Dutch!
why in the world didn't they talk to him about how he is completely irresponsible, causes the death of many gang members, constantly breaks his own rules and seems to only care about himself? You know, something along the lines of, if you don't get yourself together, man, we'll leave you, it's enough. But everything that came were a few sentences instead of a serious confrontation. All this drama could have been avoided so easily, and when Arthur starts to realize what kind of a person Dutch is, I only thought, how in the world didn't you come to this conclusion earlier? And even then, when he stands up against him, I think it's way too weak. Again, considering all the things that he has done, I only thought, wait, that's it? If you encounter Reverend Swanson at the train station, we see that he also had enough of that. But not like a coward, he wanted to take the others with him as well, but they decided to stay.
I tried to make Dutch see sense.
Little Jack? You leaving them?
I told them to run too. I asked them to come with me, but they wouldn't.
That's why I also don't understand people who complain about their toxic friends or their toxic relationship. I mean, of course not running away after the first sign of conflict, but when you've tried everything to solve your problem and express your concerns often enough, but it still doesn't work out, just leave these people or break up and move on with your life. If these people would really care about you like a true friend, partner or family member, you would still find a solution despite your disagreements. I suppose the real problem is that they're afraid of ending up alone, so that's why they're still with these people. But if you have your own hobbies, interests, ambitions, etc., I honestly don't see the problem, since you clearly see that these people don't mean well with you. Anyways, enough negativity. Let's talk about the great and inspiring side of Arthur's loyalty now. Just like he said,
You're loyal to what matters.
of course, everyone has a different definition of what matters, but for most people it would be your family, friends and your own moral compass. And Arthur shows this on countless occasions, just to name a few. Going after John, freeing Sean, helping Tilly, freeing John again, helping Sadie and freeing Abigail. Even though I hate Dutch, the moment when Bronte offered them $1,000 for killing him and they just completely ignored him was really cool. Or when they received the offer to hand him over to the Pinkertons. All these instances show us how important the gang members are to Arthur and how far he's willing to go to protect them.
You know, nothing means more to me than this gang. The bond we share. It's the most real thing to me. I would kill for it, I would happily die for it.
The big difference is that they actually deserve Arthur's loyalty and commitment. I mean, it's very unlikely that we have to get our loved ones out of prison or in mafia movies, not snitching on each other when being captured. But in our lives it would be things like helping when they move, being someone who they can talk to if they have problems and lending them an ear, helping our parents as they get older and therefore weaker, etc. Doesn't matter how busy we are or how exhausted we are after work, I think always being there for our loved ones is loyalty that we can and absolutely should implement in our own lives. And we also have him being loyal towards his own moral compass when we see him trying to make amends and help Mrs. Downs and the other woman whose name I forgot. I think ultimately the loyalty towards our own morals is the most important thing. This way the people who deserve our help will get it and those who don't won't. That's why I also like the scene when Arthur kicks out Mr. Strauss. He despises his actions and therefore won't work with him anymore. And don't get me wrong, of course people can change and regret their past mistakes, just like Arthur did. But forgiveness is also a part of our moral compass, so we would help them again. But with Dutch there was no sign of regret. I mean, after this,
I gave you all I had.
he didn't say anything except, I mean, how about, oh my god, my son, I'm so sorry to have let you down. I was blinded by greed, power and my ego. I hope you can forgive me, I'm so ashamed. But nothing. I mean, of course you can say that he actually stood up against Dutch towards the end.
I know what you said. I felt different.
But I mean, at first it was way too late, and second I think it wasn't nearly as strong as it should have been.
Better watch your goddamn mouth, boy!
Anyways, now we come to the next point.
Where's our money? The debt's canceled, and here, take this.
The aspect that I admire the most about Arthur is his change of personality. Maybe not change in chapter 2, the other gang members say that Arthur's heart is in the right place, so let's say embracing his good side. Especially his diagnosis was like a wake-up call to look back on his life and reflect on his past actions. Knowing that he only has a few months to live made him see what really matters, and he went on and did everything he could to pursue it. This made him make sure that the remaining gang members get out alive, gave money to the families from which he had to collect debt, and also helps total strangers. With our lives it's very similar, however it most likely isn't gonna be the transition from bad to good. I mean, if you do bad things you'll end up in jail, and yeah, that's the end of the story. But this concept is applicable to countless of things from our day-to-day lives. Doesn't matter whether it's a transition from shy to confident, lazy to fit, addicted to being sober, and so much more. But in order to start, most of us need some kind of wake-up call. Maybe it's the emotional pain of being laughed at for being overweight, or the sadness of being rejected by your crush. Negative moments like these can have a strong impact on us in this regard, so that we will turn our lives 180 degrees. But of course it can also be more severe, like a bad diagnosis for instance. The best example for this would be Walter White from Breaking Bad. His entire life he's been a pushover. However, after being diagnosed with lung cancer, he realizes that
I have spent my whole life scared.
Therefore, he starts to stand up for his son when being bullied and for himself as well. The passion in his marriage is back again and so much more. The great thing is that we don't have to wait for such a wake-up call but start now. If Arthur had more time, he might have even gotten into a relationship with Mary again since he realizes what really matters. But unfortunately his time ran out. Every day we can also get a diagnosis like Arthur or Walter, and then it would already be too late, or at least not as long as it could have been. Especially the conversation with Mother Cauldron really gave me the feeling that doesn't matter how we have lived our lives, we can start to become an entirely different person if we wanted to, without needing a death sentence to do so.
Where's our money? Just take the money and get out of here, please. I know I ruined your life. I suffer for it every day.
Maybe you've already heard this quote before, but according to clinical psychologist and Professor Jordan Peterson, an important factor for being a man is
You should be a monster, and then you should learn how to control it.
And I think Arthur really embodies this quote. In the beginning of the game we see his monster side, but over the course of the story we get to see how he controls it and uses it to help and protect those who are unable to do that for themselves. To be fair, he only does bad things to help their gang and to provide for them, but it still leads to horrible outcomes like ruining the Downs' life for instance. But over the course of the game he uses his strength and let's say battle competence for a lot of great things, like helping Mrs. Downs' son, freeing Tilly, protecting Karen, and so many other moments. And I suppose that woke people would consider Arthur a toxic masculine man, but we see that it highly depends on what it is used for. That's why so many toxic masculine characters are so beloved. Joel is able to protect Ellie from danger, Kratos can protect Atreus, and Geralt can protect Ciri. With statements like
It's okay to be weak.
we more and more demonize masculine strength. We see that towards the end basically everyone benefits from Arthur's strength. He's like a rock that others can rely on. Without him most of the gang members wouldn't be alive. And I'm not only talking about physical strength but also about mental strength, like the ability to stand up for yourself and your loved ones, which we unfortunately only see towards the end, but it was still pretty cool to see how he finally says something against Dutch. But as I've said, in my eyes it was way too weak considering how Dutch has treated them, but we've already talked about this. I've also made videos on Geralt, Joel, and Kratos, so in case you've enjoyed this one, feel free to check them out as well. Thank you so much for watching the video.